there folks, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you can make it because it's been a while since we've talked about Cavern. In today's episode, I'm going to bring you up to speed, let you know what's going on with me, the unit, the overall development of this prototype dry curing chamber. Now, if you're new to the channel and you're not quite sure what Cavern is, let me explain. Cavern is a project that's being spearheaded by First Build, you know, the company that brought us the Nugget Ice Maker. And their goal is to create an affordable cheese cave or dry chamber for the aspiring salumist or cheesemaker. I've been given the responsibility to test out this prototype unit to make sure that it does exactly what it's supposed to do. And all my feedback goes back to First Build, where they then make the necessary changes. Now, if you've kept up with the Cavern series, and if you haven't, I'll put a playlist at the end of this video and probably this little section right here. You'll know that things are not going so well. We've had a heck of a time trying to control humidity inside Cavern, and that's one of the most important factors when it comes to properly dry curing meat. Not enough humidity will lead to dry ring or case hardening, which could lead to spoilage. Too much humidity will cause your meat to not dry properly, which could lead to spoilage. So humidity is incredibly important. In our last update, we basically took all the guts out of Cavern and we tried to modify it ourselves. We added a humidity controller and a temperature controller. We also came back and added a dehumidifier. So the idea here is that we are now in full control, much like you would see a DIY unit at home. Now, there is one particular issue I thought we were going to be able to overcome. Unfortunately, we were not, which led to a catastrophic failure. So if you are considering building your own DIY chamber, you're definitely going to want to stick around to the end of this video because we're going to talk about this one particular issue and how important it is inside of a chamber and what we plan to do to fix it when it comes to Cavern. Let's get started. Our controllers are in place and in comes the dehumidifier. Let's go ahead and add a thermohygrometer. This allows us to, see what's going on inside the unit. Dehumidifier on, and we are ready to go. And at this point, this is like your classic DIY setup. But don't be fooled by the simplicity of what we have going on here, because there are other factors at play that will inevitably determine the success or failure of our meat projects. And I guarantee you, before this video is over, you will see those factors and how they completely affect our meat. Now, I did want a wide assortment of different projects. So we've got everything from duck, Genoa at different levels, Copa, Bresaola, Lonzino. All right, our meat is back in Cavern, and now we wait. And at this point, we're in complete control of both the temperature and the humidity. We're targeting a 55 Fahrenheit or 13 Celsius temperature inside Cavern, and we're trying to maintain an average of about 80%. And if we open up our app for our thermohygrometer, we're able to see exactly where we're at, not only the highs and lows, but also the average. This particular unit is by Govee, highly recommended. I'll put a link in the description box below. So let's take a look. This is such a great tool, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's the cheapest device you can buy that will actually help you make better salami. All right, so let's take a look at our graph. The temperature is on the top and the humidity is on the bottom, and you can see we have our highs and lows. That line right in the middle of each graph represents the average. So you can see the temperature, the high is 56.8, the low is 53.4, but we're maintaining an average of 55.5. Same thing with the humidity. 83.9% is our high, and we've got a low of 73.9%, but our average is 79.8, which is exactly what we're targeting. So we've got an average of 55 Fahrenheit and an average of 80% humidity inside this chamber. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Our pattern is nice and tight. The average of temperature and humidity is exactly where we need it, but is it enough to be able to properly dry cure meat? In the beginning of this video, I talked about one particular concern that I had with Cavern that unfortunately right now we're not able to control, and that is airflow. This particular unit produces quite a bit of air, and I'm concerned that it may be a problem. But as they say, the proof is in the dry cured meat. All right, let's go ahead and cut open some of this meat and see what it looks like on the inside. And I gotta be completely honest, I am incredibly nervous because all of this meat should have taken at least 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes even longer to finish. And we're only at week number 2 and most of it is already done. Let's see what happened. Up first, we have our Bresaola. This is a small piece from the Eye of Round. As I give it a squeeze, I can tell you right now that it feels firm on the outside, but it has a softness in the middle that it should not have. When you squeeze the charcuterie,
it should feel uniformly firm throughout. And as I give it a slice, let's go ahead and take a look at the inside. It has a beautiful color, but unfortunately, this is completely raw. Now, it has already hit its target weight loss. And as you can see right here, we have a pretty significant dry ring around this beef. Now that dry ring is keeping the moisture from escaping from the middle. If we were to let this sit inside of our chamber much longer, that raw meat in the middle will not dry and it will spoil. So for those of you who ask what case hardening looks like, this is it. Okay, let's move on to our next cut, which is the Pasteurma. And this particular cut, funny enough, actually looks acceptable. You've got that dry ring on the outside, the meat in the center is dried, and that's partially because the diameter isn't so large. Now, because we dried it in a chamber, it shouldn't have that dry ring. So you typically are going to get that dry ring when you dry this meat in conditions that are not optimal. So this is letting me know that although it looks okay and it's totally edible, there's a problem in the chamber that's causing the outside to dry faster than the inside. So we're going to have to explore that as we look at our next cut. This cut is the pork loin, incredibly challenging cut to dry cure, and it's one of the reasons why we chose it, because there's not a lot of fat on it, and it's very unforgiving. If there's a problem, it's going to show up just like it did right here. Now, the center is not completely raw. It's still pretty soft, but the outside does have a significant dry ring. Let's move on to the next cut, which is the 62 millimeter Genoa salami. 62 millimeter normally takes about 2 months, and this salami was done much faster. So as we cut it open, let's take a look at the inside, and a couple things right off the bat. I can tell you that the center is a lot softer than I would prefer, and you've got this ruby red ring that creates a bit of a half moon shape right on the top of the salami. So let me point it out for you so you can see a little bit better. And this particular line is letting me know that wherever the salami was placed, airflow is hitting it in just one spot, which is causing a dry ring to form in only one area. Now, let's give it a taste. Yep. Yep. So what we have is we have a chewier outer section and a softer center, which is not how it should be. It should be uniform throughout. So let's move on to the next project. The next project is a duck prosciutto. Basically, this is just cured duck breast. It hit its target of 129 grams, and duck is great. You know, when you have a dry curing chamber that's dialed in, this is an easy, fast project that is always a hit on any charcuterie board. Put some figs out there, some fruit. Let's cut this in half and see what it looks like. And, ooh, wow, okay. So definitely very soft. Notice we have a dry ring on the opposite side of the fat. That fat cap is going to keep the moisture from escaping, and the dry ring is going to keep the moisture from escaping. And so this could eventually become a problem. As it stands right now, it is technically edible. I mean, it's going to be incredibly soft, so depending on the kind of texture that you prefer, let's give that a little taste. Yeah. Wow. Okay. A little soft for me, but amazing flavor. So I'm going to use this duck to cook with, and it's going to be pretty incredible. Maybe toss it with a pasta or something like that. If we were to leave this into our chamber to let it dry even more, we do run the risk of it spoiling. So let's look at our last project. This is a picanha, and it smells incredible. Problem is, it feels firm to the outside, but has a very soft center. At least that's the way that it feels. And that's a very difficult thing to describe. You almost have to experience it to know what to look for. We do have, once again, a very thick outer dry ring. That's a case hardening because the center of our meat is completely raw, and this will spoil.
All right, guys, there you have it. I wouldn't call this a complete disaster. I mean, thankfully, none of our meat spoiled, and we caught it just in time. Now, I am going to be able to equalize a lot of this meat and use them in cooking projects, but as far as dry cured meat goes, this was a total bust. Now, we are able to extrapolate a lot of data, a lot of information that we're going to be able to pass on to First Build so that we can get version 2.0 a little more dialed in. As it stands right now, Cavern has a very difficult time controlling not only the humidity, but the temperature. Now, if we take control of it, we can dial it in no problem, as demonstrated in this video. So we're going to need some sort of an external interface or a better system of controlling humidity and temperature so that we can keep it within the parameters. Another major problem that we're dealing with here is airflow. Airflow is incredibly important, and it's the single biggest reason why we had so much failure with all these meat projects. The fan placement in Cavern, the way it's currently designed, is on the ceiling in the very center. Let me show you.
into Cavern we go, and check this out. Right in the very center of the ceiling, let's kind of get through that honeycomb pattern. That's where our fan is. And it is just blowing air right down the very center over all the meat. So the different cuts of meat were affected uniquely depending on where that air was. Now, I did come back and place a deflector plate right on the top to move some of that air around, but the airflow was just too strong and too consistent, and that proved to not be successful.
Having that fan right in the middle, blowing air constantly right over our meat, caused the meat to dry exponentially quicker. What should have taken 6 weeks only took a week and a half, which is kind of a huge problem. All right, so there's a couple things we need to work on before Cavern version 2.0 comes out. Temperature, airflow, and humidity are at the top of the list. A couple other things include the design of the shelves, the placement of the shelves, the honeycomb design so that we can hang more charcuterie if we want to, the implementation of an efficient humidification system, and an effective dehumidification system. Because let's face it, that's one of the biggest challenges when it comes to dry curing meat is removing excess moisture in your chamber. We also want that system to be space saving because let's face it, I want to use the majority of space available to hang meat. And in a perfect world, when it comes to the controls, I'd love to have full access to everything going on in the system. Fans, temperature, humidity, calibration. This gives us a lot more flexibility depending on what we have in the chamber. All right, and for those of you looking to build your own dry curing chamber, this is what we talked about in the beginning. Hopefully you learned a very important lesson in today's video, and that is that not all small refrigerators, dorm fridges, beverage fridges are adequate for dry curing. You need to make sure that you know where the fan placement is, that it's an appropriate fan location. You also need to make sure that it's not too fast. And does it stay on when the door gets closed, or does it only kick on when the compressor kicks on? So all of these questions have to be answered. And at the end of the day, you have to have airflow, humidity, and temperature all singing the exact same song in order for you to have properly made dry cured meat or aged cheeses. All right, with that being said, let's take a moment and see what First Build has been up to. They've been kind enough to share some behind the scene footage of what the engineers, what their tech people have been working on. And I gotta be honest, I am incredibly encouraged. Most, if not all of these issues that we're talking about right now are being addressed, and we're getting pretty darn close to seeing a fully dialed in version of Cavern that's just about ready for testing. Let's see what they've got going on over at First Build.
We're back here with Cavern, working on the next iteration of it. We're gonna have to go straight into the controls here. We're gonna have to make our own. We're gonna have to build a totally integrated system, all in one, be able to control the temperature independently to maintain a steady state, but we've also got to be able to increase and both decrease the humidity. What we're doing is prototyping a dehumidification system right here.
So now we've got our dehumidification system working pretty well. We've actually built a kind of waterproof drip tray for it. And we've also kind of worked through water management, right? Because this thing is going to be dehumidifying so much more than it ever has or was ever built to do. We had to do some tricks with water management to make sure that all the water that's being collected and condensed by this system is actually controlled and put into a place where you don't have to clean it up after. So we're using the mellow board actually to run Cavern. So the mellow board actually has all the sensors and equipment that it would need to be able to control the humidity of Cavern. So we're going to be able to use that board. The team was able to retrofit and build a housing for it so it can actually get built up into the top of the unit, kind of out of sight, but very easy to access. And we were able to develop a small LCD screen that will probably be built into the front of this, but that will be able to tell you all the information that you need to know to make sure that Cavern's actually running properly and give you that feedback.
All right, folks, there you have it. That's all I got for you today. If you want updates on Cavern directly from First Build, I'm going to put a link in the description box below and also in the pinned comment below. Click on that link, fill out the form, and First Build will send you updates as they happen, and you'll be one of the first people notified as soon as Cavern is available. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, be sure to leave them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear them. And if there's a particular feature that you would love to see built into Cavern, leave that in the comment section below. I know First Build would love to hear it. If you like this video, give it a great big thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you are new to the channel. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.